peace.
But what has he done?
But what has he done?
In many ways.
In many ways.
He's worse than Bush.
He's worse than Bush.
America is a lone wolf in this situation. Britain refused to participate, and in Obama's Nobel Peace Prize speech, he mentioned that we have to do it as an international community with cooperation, and this is obviously not the case in this situation.
Because I think this is a whole proxy war with Russia. And you know, when Obama said I'm not going to speak with him when he goes to the summit in Russia, I think that we have to sit down and act like adults.
Shame that most Americans aren't so familiar with the situation. Sadly, we're pretty much far behind. This is a devastation, but at the same time, this is what's been planned long before today's situation.
We're intervening again in something that we don't know enough about. We don't know who the good guys are, and even if we do, it's not our place to become involved again.
Let's be clear.
Let's be clear.
This country
Has
no goddamn right.
no goddamn right.
Talking about
Any
other country.
Killing people.
In the Middle East. One example. In the 1990s. Under Bill Clinton. The sanctions against Iraq. Prevented Iraq. From getting chlorine. To sterilize its water. To import medical supplies. And what was the result? Over 500,000. Children under the age of 5. Died in the 1990s. And when Madeleine Albright. From the Clinton administration. Was asked on TV. Is it worth the price? She said. Yes, it's worth the price.
We do not have the moral high ground on this issue. We use chemical weapons in Iraq and Fallujah.
I think this administration came in with all indications of maybe being a less war-hungry administration, you might say. But President Obama and his administration have really shown us otherwise. If you look at drone bombing in Yemen and Pakistan, we're killing on average 10% of the drone victims are actually children. And that program was escalated under Obama. So I think it's cause for cynicism. I don't care who's in the White House. I think it's up to us to look at history and make our decisions based on what we've seen in the past.
In the case of World War II, there was a clear distinction between a genocidal fascist and relatively liberal democracies that were fighting against each other. In this case, though I understand and empathize with people's desire for action, which is a very noble goal, you have to temper that with the idea that action has to serve some kind of positive purpose.
As a superpower, I don't think it's our job. In Iraq, for example, we're spending $19 million an hour to continue operations there in whatever capacity we're still there. And my fear is that we're going to eventually weaken ourselves to the point that we're no longer a superpower, that we're essentially a bankrupt state, and that's a major concern.
And I will say this. Whether it's the Syrian government, or the Islamic jihadists, either side is good for the Syrian people. But neither is U.S. intervention. You have to oppose both. When this goes to Congress, we will need to empower ourselves, to empower each other, to empower our politicians, to say no to this war.
The Civil War is their business. We had a civil war here in America. We had a revolutionary war in America. So it's up to the people.
I've heard that argument a lot, that it's American exceptionalism, that we need to exert our influence throughout the world. But my concern is that which we saw in Iraq. We went in with good indications that there were weapons of mass destruction. It turned out that they either didn't exist or they were moved. But regardless, I think it's cause for greater cynicism.
In terms of diplomacy and negotiation, absolutely. I think that's where America should play its role. I mean, at the end of the day, it's still a superpower, and it has significant influence and a lot of leverage. And I can't see why not, through negotiation and some sort of deal, peace deal, we can sort this out, or as a global community.
What they need to be is the internal reconstruction of the people of Syria. In other words, self-determination for the Syrian people.
I think the Syrian issue should definitely be resolved by the Syrian people. You know, you hate to sit back and watch bad things happen. Absolutely. My concern is, and this is how I see it playing out, much like we did in Afghanistan or Iraq, we go in at first, it's airstrikes, at first it's drone strikes, but you know, we put 5,000 people in, just to you know, keep some peace, keep some stability. A couple months later, well, that's not working, there's 10,000 more. And you know, eventually to the point where it's a full-blown occupation, you know, there's further unrest, there's civilians being killed. You know, I don't think that simply staying out of it is condoning the actions of use of chemical weapons. I don't think it's condoning the regime or the rebellion. I think it's simply being smart and looking at history and realizing that, you know, we need to learn from our past mistakes.
I think the best solution, if you want to know, like, hey, something's happening in Syria, like, can I do something? The best thing for anybody in America to do would be to donate money to one of the relief organizations that's working in Jordan or Lebanon or Syria to actually help the civilians who have been displaced, millions of them. And you know, instead of like agitating for armed conflict, we can actually help the people who least deserve to be hurt by any action.
I wish the people of the world would stand up against this, go out into the streets and demonstrate. This is not what we need. We don't need another war. We don't need to kill any more people.
Just, man, say no to war. Yeah. Always say no to war.